This is a 2024 Polestar 2, and regular viewers of the channel might be saying, didn't you just review this car? And the answer is yes, we did. But that version was all-wheel drive. This is the new for 2024 rear drive variant, and it has a few changes under the skin that I'm about to tell you about. Like all 2024 Polestars, the rear drive gets a new front grille, which contains Polestar's Smart Zone, which is their clever way of referring to most of the driver assist sensors. The super cool Thor's headlight design carries over as well from the previous version. And there is a 1.2 cubic foot front trunk with a divider in it, which is actually a federal safety thing because apparently kids can't fit in a space this small with the divider. And it even comes with a level 2 charging cable that's nice and thick and sturdy. Kia doesn't ship these with your car anymore, so it's nice to see it as an option. And this is a great place to put it, right up front. The biggest changes are under the skin because Polestar moved the electric motor from the front axle to the rear and up to the power to 220 kilowatts. That's 229 horsepower and 361 foot-pounds of torque. Additionally, they added a 82 kilowatt hour battery, which is good in this version for up to 307 miles of range, and in some variants all the way up to 320 miles. Additionally, with the new battery and charging hardware, this car will peak charge at 205 kilowatts compared to the 150 to 155 kilowatts that the all-wheel drive version does. Now that we're inside the Polestar 2, I must say that Craig's interior review is pretty spot on. If you haven't seen that already, click the link in the pop-out box above or in the description box below. This mid-spec trim is a black, Polestar calls it like a 3D deco type of interior. It's very nicely put together, it's very well assembled, and it is vegan, there's no leather, there's no materials like that. One of the downsides though is a lot of the higher wear points seem to scuff pretty easy and get a lot of dirt on them. A lot of people like black interiors because you don't have to maintain them as much as you do on like a white or a cream interior. So I've actually found myself having to wipe down spots throughout the week more than I would in another car, which is a little weird to say the least and not something I'm particularly fond of. Things I am fond of, though, is this car doesn't have an ignition switch. If you look on the center console or up by the steering wheel, there's no way to turn the car on. What you do is, as long as the key is on you or somewhere inside the car, you just open the door, sit down, put your foot on the brake, put it in the drive, car starts, and you are on your way. When you're done, just put it in park, open up the door, and walk out. And when you lock the car, it just turns itself off. Tesla's been doing this since the dawn of Tesla, basically, and some other automakers have picked up on it. You don't really need a key in 2024, so it's kind of nice to not have to have that ignition, especially if you're using your phone as a smart key. The center instrument cluster here is pretty high resolution and has a good color reproduction, but it's pretty basic in what it'll show you. It'll either show you a basic sort of view of how fast you're going, your battery consumption and range, or it'll show you a high-resolution digital map. Now, the digital map is Google-based because this whole infotainment system is Google-based, or, interestingly enough, it'll show you Apple Maps if you have your phone connected through CarPlay. A lot of other automakers give you some more customization, though. You can either view song information, track information, more detailed driving information, or what the driver assist functions are doing at any given time. This doesn't really show you any of that. Does it matter? I don't know, but some people like to have that customization, and it's kind of a bummer that it's not there. The infotainment system itself is Android Automotive based, has some new processing power behind it for 2024. It's super snappy. It does support Apple CarPlay, however, the biggest drawback is it doesn't support it wirelessly, which means you gotta have one of these always in your car, and if it's white like mine, it doesn't match the interior, and the plug is in a really weird place. So it's not the most luxurious solution, but I will say, though, that wired Apple CarPlay is a million times more reliable than wireless, so I'd probably plug it in anyways. But it would be nice to see that as an upgraded option to support it wirelessly. There is no Android Auto because it's Android Automotive built in, so you actually have access to the App Store, can install your own apps, your own podcast app, Apple Music, whatever you want to install and sort of work through it that way. Being a mid-spec car, this has a Harman Kardon stereo. It's not as nice as the Bowers or Wilkins that you can get on some high-end Polestar and Volvo models, but it gets the job done. Now, let's take this rear drive model for a spin and see, one, if we can tell the difference, and two, find out how much better it performs. I'm not entirely convinced in the year 2024 that most people who buy new cars can feel the difference between a front-wheel drive car and a rear-wheel drive car. Yeah, they may notice some torque steer on a front-wheel drive car, but they know that they almost prefer the front-wheel drive architecture because if it does snow, if they do live somewhere where it's a bit chillier, they'll have better traction without having to go all the way to an all-wheel drive car, which in EVs tends to be the preference, actually going to all-wheel drive, because that's where you get the higher horsepower, the higher performance. So when Polestar made the decision, and collectively Geely, because Volvos are now also rear drive, the company said, look, we're going to make it better for the people who do like to drive. And the rear drive Polestar 2 does drive a little nicer. Obviously there is no torque steer, which is great. It's also kind of fun when the road's a little wet with some rain that, you can kick the butt out around a roundabout. Like that's fun. The benefit is the handling becomes a little bit more neutral. Yes, it still leans a bit towards understeer for safety reasons, but rear drive is just better. Making that transition also to rear drive means there's some other potential trade-offs though. Like I said before, the winter traction. Now we've had several EVs in the winter on their all-season tires that they come with that are rear drive, and we haven't had any problems driving them in the winter. The extra weight from the batteries, especially since the batteries are typically down low, really do help with traction. But if you still, are thinking, I don't know, you can throw a set of winter tires on the car. We have a review of the Michelin X-Ice winter tires. You can click the pop-up window, I believe, over here or in the description box below to see Craig's review on that. And interestingly enough, this car right now is running those X-Ice tires, which is part of the reason why I haven't talked about the increased range. With this extra 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, some of these versions can see up to 320 miles of range. Winter tires, though, just aren't particularly energy efficient, so I haven't really commented much on the range in this video. The rest of the driving dynamics, though, it feels like a quality product. It drives like a quality product. At highway speeds, even these winter tires are pretty quiet, which is more of a testament, I think, to Michelin instead of Polestar in this case. But there is very little wind noise. Even at 80, let's call it 80-ish miles an hour, it scoots. And it sounds quiet, and it feels like a premium car. The downsides to some of that aerodynamic efficiency, these outside mirrors in this car are very tiny. They work and you can get them positioned reasonably well, but in some cars, especially the eGMP cars, they're just larger. It's a little easier to see. And since there is no sort of secondary supplemental camera on the instrument cluster, like a lot of those Hyundai and Kia products, hinders visibility a little bit. Where visibility is really hurt, though, is out the rear. The window is probably about the size of the new Prius, which is to say, not great. And this car would really, really benefit from the option that the Prius has, which is a screen for the rear view camera, or for the rear view mirror. In the rest of this sort of day-to-day usage, again, I've mentioned the infotainment, but it's easy enough to use. There really aren't a lot of drive modes to choose from. You can put the ESC in Sport if you want to slide around a tiny bit. You can change the steering feel from light to standard to firm. None of them have a particularly excellent amount of feedback, but that's just how cars are these days. And the controls are all, reasonably close and easy to reach. Craig has talked about a little bit about being cramped, which he talks about in the interior, especially in the rear seats. You do feel a little bit more closed in here than you would on another car, but I've driven this quite a bit this past week, and I haven't noticed, I'm not particularly uncomfortable. Wish the seats were ventilated. I think that would help on a longer drive. I also wish there was some massage function, but this is really a mid-spec car. The biggest drawback from a daily driving standpoint is the cup holder is here, There's like one easily accessible cup holder for the driver, no really easy accessible cup holder for the passenger, and it's also sort of like if you sit and drive like this, which isn't a particularly uncommon driving position. If you have something larger than a can in here, it'll kind of jut up against your arm. Little annoying things like that, but overall driving experience, I mean, the car is plenty quick. It's 220 kilowatts, that's just under 230 horsepower, and because it's all electric, that power is, it's there nearly instantly, so you can take advantage of gaps in traffic. If you do accidentally pull out in front of somebody, you can catch up, you can get ahead of them super quick. Overall, it's a really positive experience. In the car, like Polestar, by switching it to rear drive, has made this real mid-spec car all the better as a performance driving sort of experience. If you want like the full-on performance experience, they do have an all-wheel drive version with the performance pack, which has the Öhlins manually adjustable dampers and just a bunch of extra high-tech stuff, but that does add to the price, and you're probably not going to use that really in the day-to-day, where this car is plenty quick in plenty of situations, and just is a real, honestly, it's a real overall kind of gem to drive. I would describe it much, 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 much more like a BMW 3 Series or a 4 Series, and much less a Lexus ES. And some of these mid-spec electric luxury-focused cars tend to err a little bit on the softer side. This is definitely giving you the sporty experience. So to recap, here's where the 2024 Polestar 2 single motor excels and how it could be improved. The Android Automotive-based infotainment works well and is responsive. The portrait orientation limits some usefulness, like the 360-degree camera view, but overall it's a highlight. Because Polestar and Volvo are cousins, safety is a priority, and the Polestar 2 has a 5-star overall crash rating from NHTSA. Over-the-air updates can also make the Polestar 2 better over time, and there actually have been updates to do just that. Some automakers say they update, but Polestar actually does. I'm not as tall as Craig at 5'10", but I agree that the rear seats are a bit tight, and I do wish the rear windows went all the way down. I also wish the interior was a little less dirt-prone, especially in black, which is the color that people get when they want an easy-to-maintain interior. Finally, it'd be nice if CarPlay were wireless, but it's not a huge deal. The Polestar 2 is a more than competent sports sedan with plenty of power for the day-to-day. At an as-tested price of $56,750 with delivery, it's a bit pricier than some of the competition, but if you want a high-tech, Scandinavian-focused vehicle, you could do worse than the Polestar 2. Did you know that Polestar is an offshoot of the Chinese automaker Geely, and that the Polestar 2 is actually assembled in China? Soon, there may be a swath of Chinese EVs on sale in North America, and Craig recently took a look at one that right now is priced at just $10,000. To learn more, click right over here.